Hello, my name is Ayala Connell and I'm a healthy eating coach and I specialize in gluten-free and paleo cuisine. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make sweet crepes filled with apple cinnamon filling. And they're delicious and really simple to make and certainly in a single serving capacity. So let's talk a little bit about paleo, just so you get a little bit more of an understanding. So essentially with paleo, one of the biggest foods that you're trying to avoid is grain. And not just the gluten grains like whole wheat flour and things of that nature, but also the gluten-free grains like rice and corn flours. But just like anyone else, we love to have nourishing food, and oftentimes that is in the form of bread and crepes and pancakes. So we're searching for things that are grain-free, and there is a wonderful flour that's made out of the cassava root. Now, many of you might be familiar with tapioca or tapioca starch. Well, tapioca starch is actually the starch from the tapioca root, which is also called the cassava root. So cassava flour is actually the whole root flour, and it's grain-free, and it's a fantastic substitute as long as you understand some of the parameters of how to use it in different dishes. So today it's going to be the basis for our sweet crepes. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do is heat up your cast iron pan, and I love to use cast iron because it's got a bit more of a rustic feel, and certainly with apple cinnamon filling, it makes us think of fall and the foliage and crisp. So what you do is you heat it up onto a little sort of medium-low. You put a little bit of oil in and let it coat the pan and get nice and hot. And then what you're going to do is take an apple, and you can choose a variety of apples. I love Granny Smith because they have a little bit of a tartness. And then what you're going to do is you're going to peel the apple, and then you're going to cut it and slice it into thin slices that are about 1/4 inch wide, although it doesn't really matter. It's more about preference. And then you're going to put it in the pan and sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon on it, and you're going to just move it around, essentially sauteing it in that coating of oil until it gets nice and soft. Now, I did that already in, essence of time, to shorten the video a little bit and also shorten the noise of the crackling with the apples in the cast iron. But as you can see here, the apple slices are pretty thin and very soft and deliciously fragrant with that cinnamon flavor. So what we're going to do now, the pan is still hot. We want to put a little bit more oil in it just to make sure that it's nice and coated, and particularly with a cast iron, it needs to be coated for things not to stick. And for those of you that are less familiar with cast irons, know that the handle gets just as hot. So you really want to be prepared and make sure that it's nice and coated, but also using some type of protection from your hands so they don't get burnt. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a small bowl. Now we're into making the actual crepe batter. And we're going to take about 2 tablespoons of cassava flour. Now the measurement is not exact, and it doesn't need to be for this because a little bit more, a little bit less is just going to make a delicious crepe anyway. And so I've got about 2 tablespoons, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an egg, and I'm going to crack it in. And it can be a large egg, it can be a medium egg, it doesn't matter so much. And then I'm going to put in a little bit of milk. Now I like to use hemp milk because there's people in my family that have nut sensitivities. But nut milks are a great substitute. Coconut milk is a very nutritious substitute. And what I'm going to do is put in about 1/4 cup of milk. And again, it doesn't have to be so exact. And if the batter is not the right consistency, once you're whisking it, you can always add a little bit more milk or a little bit more cassava flour. Then I'm going to put in about 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Give it that nice vanilla undertone. And I like to put in a pinch of salt because a little bit of salt makes everything sweeter. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to whisk it up. And you don't need an electric mixer for this. This is really a single serving dish. And even if you're making multiple crepes, I find it so much easier to do single serving batches. And then just a bowl. Literally in the mornings I feel like a line chef. I've got 2 little ones that are just sweet as all, and they might want different flavored crepes. And it's always a nice challenge for me in the morning before school to get everybody up and out the door in time. So I just line up the bowls and I put in the ingredients in each one, and then while one is cooking I whisk up the next one. And it works out actually really well. It's not that challenging once you have a sense of it, once you're familiar with the process. So what you want to do is just whisk this up until it's really smooth. So essentially you're whisking out all the lumps. In the beginning you might think, how are these lumps ever going to disappear? But just keep whisking and I promise you it's going to be really, really smooth. And if it seems like it's too thick, which of course you'll get a sense of once you do the recipe more than once, then you can add a little bit more milk. And if it seems like it's too thin, too watery consistency, then definitely add a little bit more cassava flour. Sometimes that depends on the size of the egg, but again, it's not a perfect science and it doesn't have to be, which is what makes it so good when it's early morning and you're a little tired and you just don't have the head for measuring things too much. So I've got this nice and smooth. You can see all the lumps are pretty much out. And what I'm going to do, the pan is hot, I'm going to make sure that that oil is again spread around the pan nice and evenly. The pan is on essentially medium-low. And I'm going to take the batter, and I'm going to pour it in the center of the pan. Get all of it out. It doesn't actually reach the ends of the pan because this cast iron is a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to let it sit for a minute or two so that it starts to set. And then what I'm going to do, once it's set partially, is I'm going to take the apples and I'm going to line up at least half of them vertically in the center. And I'm going to save the other half for putting on top because it's a fun presentation for the crepe. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and it's partially set, definitely on the ends, but still kind of uncooked in the middle, which is fine. I'm going to start to set these apples right in the center. They're still a little bit hot, so be careful. And I'm going to hold this up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just fold one end over and then fold the other end over. So you can see how I folded that end over. And now I'm going to fold it over again. I'll show you what that looks like. You see? And now I'm just going to let it sit for another minute or two, and then I'm going to flip it again and let the other side cook. I'm going to get my plate ready to serve it. And it's just smelling so fragrant, that cinnamon smell, the vanilla. The hemp milk has a nice sort of nutty, even though it's a seed, a nice nutty aftertone. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip it one more time to get a nice sear crust on the other side. It's just looking so beautiful, you can see. Yeah. And then, now that I can see that it's nice and cooked inside, I'm going to take it and I'm just going to move it onto the plate. And you might need 1 or 2 spatulas to do that. Okay. And I'm going to put the plate a little bit closer to me. And you can see what it looks like. And now I'm just going to take the remainder of the apples and I'm just going to layer them on top. A nice pattern, if that's important to you, which is always kind of fun to make the food look really presentable. Yeah. And my kids love to help with making these crepes, so we always get a little bit of a stool. And my 10-year-old son doesn't need one, but my 7-year-old daughter does. And now what I'm going to do is take a little bit more cinnamon, and I'm going to just sprinkle some on, because it's just so fragrant and beautiful. And then I like to serve this with honey instead of maple syrup, although really it's whatever your preference is. You really don't need a lot, but again, that's a preference as well. I usually just take a teaspoon of honey and I just drizzle it over. Oh yeah. And I love to use local honey because it's great as an anti-allergen for those of you that are not familiar with that, because the bees in the area that are helping to push the nectar around, they're spreading the pollen, and it's helpful. It's sort of like an antibiotic, I guess is a good way to say it, to help reduce our reaction to allergens in the area. And this is a finished product, and it is so delicious. Let's see. Fork. a try. All right. Let's do it. So delicious. There's a little bit of crunch still in the Granny Smith apple, a little bit of tartness. Definitely taste the cinnamon, though it's not overwhelming. A little bit of honey gives it more of that sweetness. The crepe is so soft. It is absolutely a beautifully nourishing rustic meal for a good fall morning or any other morning you can find apples. But a super simple recipe. So give it a try, and I hope you enjoy this sweet crepe in your own morning kitchen activities, and check out more videos from my blog. Thanks so much.